Hello folks, for today's video I do have an introduction into stealth, essentially crash coursing you all in everything you will need to know to get started. I've been having incredible success with this strategy so far, and I actually began working on these stealth videos a few days ago. However, I've since found that the topic itself is far more complicated and extensive than I originally thought, so I've opted for this crash course first, and then I'll be releasing much more extensive videos over the coming days and weeks. As a quick little side note folks, we are sponsored by Games Planet on this channel, so if you'd like Arc Raiders or any other PC game at a discounted price, then do feel free to use the link below. And it does very much help out the channel, so thank you very much if you do. Anyway, as always, this guide is absolutely rammed with information and we are not wasting any time, so let's get started. Now, in regards to stealth itself, the two most important factors to cover are visual and, more importantly, audio cues. Visual cues being arc units yellow or red, meaning they are actively hunting or fighting against other players, of course, as well as seeing distant gunfire, explosions, smokes, radar flares, etc. And these are all generally self-explanatory. However, one key element to Arc Raiders is its use of lighting, and definitely something all players should be considering. As an example, in these screenshots right here, we have the same corridor seen from both different perspectives. As you can see, players in the darkened end can't be seen at all, whilst players at the other end are in plain sight. When in the darkness, you can still be seen whilst moving, as it will create some motion for players with a very keen eye. Otherwise, if you remain still, you are very hard to spot. Players that aim into the darkness with some aim assist will notice their crosshair gravitate towards you and thus may figure out you're there. But generally, the only other giveaways are if players get very close and the darkness shrouding you becomes visible, or if you silhouette yourself against the light background, such as if you were to stand in front of this entrance here. So, as a general rule, always use lighting to your advantage and be cautious when entering large dark spaces, as there's nothing to stop other players from being hidden within. And as a final side note, some skins will give these advantages away, such as this skin with the flashlight attachment on the helmet, or the archaeologist backpack, which also has some lights on the back. Just a small tidbit for you all to consider. Now, the counterpart to visuals is of course audio, and do bear with me here because there is an awful lot to cover. First, if you are not using headphones, then you are at a massive disadvantage, as a lot of players are. Headphones give you directional input for audio, meaning if you hear steps to your left, then there's a player to your left, and if you hear the zipline behind you, then there's a player on the zipline behind you. But it also massively helps with measuring distance, as naturally faint steps means players further away, whereas loud steps means players are close by. There are an absolute ton of audio cues within this game. Each arc enemy, individual weapon shot, interaction, movement, etc. all have their own distinct sounds, and only familiarity will help you with identifying and becoming comfortable with them all. The main audio cues you'll be listening out for in regards to other players is breaching, running, jogging, walking, and looting, from loudest to quietest in that order. Breaching naturally being quite loud, however the sound of breaching outside travels further than the sound of breaching inside, and looting can't really be heard until you're very close to the other player. There are also a ton of other useful audio cues, such as cameras, metal detectors, zip lines, or doors being opened and closed, and given your familiarity with the location you're in, you may even know exactly what camera just detected an enemy, or what door they may have just opened or closed. It all comes down to knowledge and familiarity of both audio cues and locations in general. I will be discussing audio a great deal more in both this video and others, but that does about summarize it for the time being. Now, to combine all of this together, I think it's best I just give a couple of quick examples as to exactly what I mean and the strict rule set I follow pretty much all of the time. So, for example 1, when approaching buildings, I get relatively close and then crouch before entering, and then almost exclusively remain crouched the entire time. I do not loot, I do not breach, and I'm cautious about opening doors or using zip lines until I've taken some time to listen to my surroundings. Now, actually listening for other players is incredibly easy when you are crouched, as you basically make zero noise and thus can hear an awful lot through the silence. The only counter to this would be other players that either remain still or are crouched themselves, which currently is almost no one. So, at least for now, I have been having incredible success being one of the very few players who actually does sneak around. In this particular scenario, I heard someone looting the rooms above me, and thus I knew they were there, but they had no idea I was below. I actually placed the shock mine at this entrance, but another player come charging into the building and triggered it, which gave me a free kill. And then he had another shock mine, to which another player came charging in and triggered this one too. The commotion these fights caused no doubt indicated to the player above that players were below. However, after this, I remained completely silent and went back to waiting. In this particular instance, I know the rooms above only have 2 exits, one being this zip line here, and the other being these metal stairs, meaning I can afford to wait for the other player. As cautious as he may be, I know they will be forced to use one of these 2 exits, and thus I still have a solid advantage over them. At one point, I placed myself on this corner, kind of under the shroud of darkness, but able to see and hear both the zipline entrance and staircase entrance behind me. But then I heard him travelling towards the zipline entrance above, and thus repositioned for better range. My readings on all of the audio cues are correct, and like clockwork, he appears right in front of me. He does react immediately, which is likely due to him somewhat expecting confrontation, given he did hear combat and raider flares down here earlier, but ultimately, I did still have the advantage. Now, for example 2, we do have something a little more active. Me and my buddy Devis were tracking another duo into the hydroponic labs, and after a little while, tracked them down to this large main building. From this supply depot here, we can see one of the 3 entrances to the building we think they're in, and from previous experience, we know that to push this doorway from this position is a fish in a barrel scenario if they have eyes on the doorway. So we wait for the bots to fly over, and then back out around the supply depot. From here, we see lots of commotion over at the main door to the structure, and thus assume the closest entrance is not being watched. I enter crouched and begin making my way to where I think they are, which is the main entrance to my left. I know this because of familiarity with this location, and from what I can hear to my left. I tell Devis to hurry up and catch up to me before they clear the arc, and then switch to my fuse grenades and land both at their feet. I doubt this duo would have heard us running behind them had we have just rushed inside, but this approach was absolutely flawless nonetheless. Had they have noticed us or just come around the corner as we were still crouched, the fact we're making no noise means we would have likely heard them before seeing them, and thus would have had time to pre-aim, find cover, etc. It wouldn't have been perfect, but we would still have been in a great spot. But what we are always looking for with this strategy is to find a prime opportune moment, and then very much seize it. For example, laying shock mines and then finishing off anyone unfortunate enough to step inside, or sneaking up behind a very boxed in duo and taking advantage with powerful explosives. In example 1, it's my own use of stealth that really seals the deal and secures victory over all 3 other players, whereas in example 2, it's the other duo's reckless behaviour that created noise and distraction, but most importantly a moment, for us to both take advantage of. However, it is still our stealth and familiarity that also allowed us to be in the right place at the right time altogether. So the overarching point here being, a combination of both stealth and audio cues are your 2 biggest strengths with this playstyle. The very fact that few players are operating like this currently essentially strengthens how much useful this strategy currently is, and its only real consistent counter is if other players choose to play the same way. Otherwise, anyone creating any amount of noise is usually at a clear disadvantage to yourself, and this does go beyond just skulking around buildings or facilities. I'll keep this next section brief as it generally follows the same principles as before, but when travelling from one side of the map to the other, you'll generally want to follow this pattern or rule set. Number 1, always move cover to cover and try not to commit to wide open spaces if possible. Number 2, always periodically tuck into cover or bushes and simply just take a few moments to look and listen. Number 3, when moving, always be rotating your camera and looking for both arc and any signs of other players. Number 4, always be aware of major locations close to you, i.e. if you're very close to a hotspot, then be aware of this and understand where players are most likely to be or travelling towards. Or if you hear combat not very far away, check your map and see if the direction and a nearby building or facility line up, as this can go a very long way with establishing what's actually happening around you. And then finally for number 5, if gunshots are followed shortly after by explosions, then it usually means players are destroying arc. However, if you hear a lot of gunfire but no explosions, then it can mean that player versus player combat is active. But this usually always has a raider flare or 2 as well. By following this advice and these rules, you'll increase the chances of you noticing other players first, or at least at the same time as they notice you, and thus you'll minimise the chances of being surprised, shot in the back, etc. Of course, nothing can truly stop other players from randomly seeing you before you see them. However, an awful lot can be done to minimise this, both in and outside of buildings and objectives, and I've been having some incredible success so far. Now, 2 very important items you should consider for stealth and survival overall are little smoke grenades and adrenaline shots, which are made using the utility station and medical clinic crafting benches respectively. They cost nothing outside of chemicals and plastic and are very, very cheap to make. Adrenaline shots recover full stamina and generally help with travelling, escaping, and any situation you need more stamina urgently. Given they are very cheap to make, I carry these on every raid, and I advise you start doing so too. Little smoke grenades are more important for the actual topic of stealth, and these help in a vast amount of ways against both Ark and other players. For Ark units, they're best used when thrown at your own feet, preferably whilst the Ark unit is not aware of your presence, i.e. they are still lit up blue. This will always result in them not noticing you, and you will have a lot of success in this regard. However, if the Ark unit has just noticed you and is currently investigating and thus showing a yellow light, the smokes themselves may not last long enough, and you may have mixed results when using them. This works better when mixed with foliage or any kind of cover between yourself and the Ark unit, but foliage and bushes will also work really well against Ark that are either blue or yellow. Aggressive Ark shown with the red lights are much harder to shake off using smokes, and thus it's best you consider using smokes before the Ark notices you at all. Now, in regards to using them against other players, the two main reasons would be escaping an engagement entirely, or using them to reposition or flank other players. As an example, here I'm pinned down pretty bad, and without smokes, I have no other option than to hold my ground and take this fight. However, using smokes, I am able to heal up amidst all the cover, and then I'm able to place shock mines and try to escape, which actually works out pretty well. In all fairness, these are big smoke grenades in this clip, and not the little ones, however, you can still see how they work. In this other clip, I used little smoke grenades to cover this area here, so I can then safely approach and throw grenades at my opponent. This does some damage to them, and thus keeps them hunkered down and healing, as I'm able to pick off 3 shots. We will cover these more in the future, but I just wanted to highlight how useful both of these items are. Now, that was an awful lot, and despite wanting to keep this video quite short, it is still longer than I planned, but I hope that has helped crash course you all. I do have much more to share and say, so if you appreciated this video, then do stick around for the others coming soon. And I'm also working on a range of other guides regarding actual PvP, as well as the skill tree, inventory management in and out of game, etc. So plenty is definitely on the way. Anyway, that would be it for this one, folks. I'll be back soon with plenty more, and I do of course have a range of guide and news videos on the channel already, so do feel free to stop on by and check things out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, and until next time, peace.